Hey everybody, this is Dave again at Title Recovery and CarTitles.com. There are occasions when the type of documentation that goes along with a vehicle is either a junked title or a certificate of destruction or some other designated paperwork that shows that the car was basically junked or salvaged beyond the point of being able to be used as a vehicle anymore. You'll see salvage titles, you'll see rebuilt titles. Either one of those can still be presented as a vehicle for registration, for road use. When you have a car that has a certificate of destruction, what that means is that an insurance company has processed a claim and a loss on that vehicle for well in excess of the value. And what they basically do is say, look, this is no longer a vehicle. They issue a certificate of destruction. It's not even a title with a stamp on it. It's a separate piece of paperwork. Sometimes it's called a junked title. In some states, it extinguishes that VIN number. That car is no longer legally a passenger vehicle. It is now just an assemblage of parts, and it can only be used for that. In most cases, it has to be issued to a licensed dismantling facility. It can't be issued to a person or somebody to use it as a car. So if you have that status on your vehicle, or if you find out later that a car that you bought that you were supposed to get a title for has a junked title or a certificate of destruction, that's not the same as a salvage title. It's not the same as a rebuilt title. It's a potentially fatal situation for that vehicle. There's a couple ways to approach correcting that problem or remediating it so you can use that car the way you want to. Number one, you can try to undo that process. There's a few ways to undo it. If you were promised contractually that you would receive a title for that vehicle, or that the vehicle was used for a particular purpose, such as registering it or selling it, you can go back to the seller. Hopefully that seller was the insurance company, and tell them that they have to undo that because that's not what was contracted with you. If it is not agreed to, or that isn't resolved, through that conversation, you may have to resort to legal pursuit in court, suing the seller or suing the insurance company if they breach their contract. If the person you bought the car from was not the insurer, you may have to go back and look and see if the insurer can undo that based on the fact that it was a different interpretation of the value of that vehicle. If that doesn't work, which a lot of times it won't, you may have to have the vehicle presented almost like a kit car and have a reissued ID number to that car, where it's presented, this car was put back together, it's like a kit car, it's something that's a brand new assemblage of parts. In some states it's required that it has to be enough new or reconstructed parts and components so that it's enough of a different vehicle from the old one. In some states you have to have it inspected 4 or 5 times at different levels. That's state specific. The other way to undo it is to see if the title that was issued or the certificate of destruction that was issued didn't follow procedural requirements in that state. If the insurance company took that certificate of destruction or that junked title and issued it to a private party or issued it to a dealership when they weren't allowed to in that state by statute, that may be a reason to force that application to be withdrawn, and now it's a car again. So it's very important to catch this early on, because once it gets into the system, that VIN number is circulated through every state. It can no longer be used as a vehicle. Going to another state isn't going to help you. And just beware, even if that was going to help you, it's illegal. You can't use a different state's titling process to undo a title status, such as junked, such as salvage, such as certificate of destruction. So once it has that brand on it, it circulates throughout the states. If there is some, very tight navigation of loopholes that temporarily will get that stamp removed, it's going to show back up again later. And if you were the one who changed that stamp or branding, you're going to have a problem, because it's a federal law and it's a federal felony to change title status using different states' titling process. So certificate of destruction, it's a very serious issue on a vehicle. If you have that, you want to try to take action sooner than later. Once it's in the system and circulated through all the different states, sometimes it's very difficult to undo that, although there are methods to do it. We've worked on them before. They're tough cases, but it can be done depending on the value of the vehicle and if it's worth the trouble to do that, or just to sell it for parts. Don't try to sell it to another party just to get the product problem off your hands, especially if you represent that they'll get a title, because at that point now the problem is going to bounce back to you once they have their difficulty too. So titlerecovery.com, cartitles.com. Keep your questions coming in.